Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the Cold Fusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome back to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition. It's March 24th, 2020. And I'm Gavin Pickens, software consultant for Order Solutions. I'm one of your hosts. And Brad, who are you?
I am Brad Wood, zombie hunter of Order Solutions. Got my boomstick. I'm ready to face this apocalypse, Gavin. Let's go.
What apocalypse? I don't know what you're talking about.
I was thinking this morning, we need like a box product for this or something, like Corona Box. I don't even know what it would do, but it would have to involve killing zombies. Is there a way we can work on this?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe we could do a CommandBox tool that just pulls in all the stats and live counters them inside your console, so you can see all the counts going up and down.
It's depressing though.
Yeah.
If I did it, I would only want stats that showed like how many like recovered COVID-19 cases there are. I'm tired of looking at all the new ones. Yeah. Nobody talks about the recovered ones. It's actually a lot more not depressing. What's the opposite of depressing?
Inspiring, positive.
There you go. It's more inspiring to look at good stuff.
Yeah, just ignore the other ones. That's a good idea. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to give you some news so you can forget about everything else. So thanks to our sponsor, Order Solutions. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this podcast. So thank you for that. And for those who don't know, ColdBox platform, CommandBox, TestBox, ContentBox, the CommandBox Docker images, everything is created by Order Solutions, and they do.
CoronaBox.
Shh, not yet. Don't release it yet, Brad. But yeah, so all those products are made by Order Solutions, and we offer training, so you can get trained by the people who made those tools, so you can get the training where you need it. Usually we offer on-site, but currently we're only offering online training. So if you're looking for training for one of those tools, or something else that we offer, please let Order Solutions know and we can arrange something for you. So we definitely have a lot of online training, and we expect that's going to be even more in the upcoming time. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters that now we're up to 41% of our mark for fully funding all of our podcasts via our Patreon site, which is patreon.com/ordersolutions. So if you love our podcast and all that we do for CFML, consider chipping in. And we're making progress towards that goal. So hopefully that goal can be self-sustaining, and then we can keep giving you this great content and maybe some more.
We've had some new signups to Patreon recently, which I think we'll talk about at the end, right?
Yep, there's a couple of new ones last week. So we're getting some new ones trickling in. So we appreciate that. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent.
Okay, so let's get on with the news. So, what's the first item on our news list today, Brad?
News and events. ITB is now a virtual conference.
Yep.
So, virtual. We really wanted to be able to do this thing live, but there's just no way. So, after basically talking it over a lot and monitoring all this COVID-19 nonsense and reading about all the health official recommendations, we're turning it into a virtual conference. So it's still happening, still have all the content, but it's going to be online.
Yep, so the same days, so it'll be the 7th and 8th of May. The conference is going to go on just like a virtual conference, so same days, same schedule. Actually, a couple of speakers that weren't able to make it are now going to make it, so that's actually pretty exciting. So we had one that couldn't make it due to another conflict, and now he's able to present. So you'll see the schedule's updated a little bit, but it's going to be the same time. And so there'll be basically 2 live stream sessions that you can watch if you're purchase a ticket. And then if you don't get to see a session, the session's going to be recorded. So as an attendee, you get access to all those sessions as well. The keynotes will be streamed live for free. So if you guys aren't able to make it and purchase a ticket, you can still watch the live stream. So we usually give a pretty good recap of everything happening in the Ordis world. So the keynotes will be free. And the conference tickets, since we don't have the in-person conference, we don't have to worry about all the hotel accommodation for all the speakers and the hotel venue itself and all the food. The ticket prices have been slashed dramatically. So the conference ticket prices are $199, and as I mentioned, that gives you access to all the recordings as well. So I think it's actually cheaper than we had the video package last year for the conference while the conference was on. So that's a pretty good deal, I think. So yeah, registration is now available if you want to go and register that for intothebox.org. Everyone has been asking about the workshops, though. What about the workshops? So we decided, instead of trying to get all those workshops scheduled the same day before, the 2 days before, we were going to basically postpone those. So you should be getting refunds if you purchase tickets already for the workshops. What we're going to do is we're going to schedule them at later times, and we're trying to work out the schedule. We're probably going to have at least maybe 1 or even 2 a month, and just spread them out over the next few months. So that way, if somebody wants to enter the BDD, they have no conflicts. They can just take that one. And then when we do the containerization one, if you want to do it, you can sign up and do that. And so we're going to spread them out a little bit, so that way everyone can take what they need to, and that gives us, more time to concentrate on delivering the right workshop experience. With sessions, it's not as much crowd interaction. It is nice to have that crowd interaction, though. That's something we'll miss with the online. But with a workshop, we really do like to be, talking. You look over your shoulder, help you with things. So we want to make sure that experience is, up to par. And so if we want to have a bigger registration of workshops, we have to make sure we schedule the right number of helpers and have Zoom rooms with breakout sessions, so we can have like little groups. So we're going to make sure that they're top quality workshops as well. So we'll give you more information on the workshops as we get them.
Cool. Mingo Hagen pointed out in the chat that apparently we tweeted out the link to last week's video. So that's where all our live viewers are. They're busy watching last week's, I guess. I wonder if they've noticed it yet.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, I just tested it. I clicked the link and it opened up the March 17th podcast recording. Oops. So I'm sure there's at least 100 people right now, probably just studiously watching last week's recording.
Actually, I didn't change the title on it, so it says last week, but it's actually this week's. Whoops. So let me update that right now. Sorry, people. So, yeah, the link had the wrong name on it. Whoops. But
it's actually a link to an hour and 14-minute video, though. It's not a link to a live stream.
Oh, then I really messed up. So sorry, everybody. So
well, Mingo figured it out, so we can't trick everybody.
Okay, well, I'm going to share
too smart for us.
I'm going to reshare this link right now, just in case. So I must have shared the wrong one.
Well, it never hurts to get more views on the previous recordings. Okay. Also, I zoned out. Did you talk about the 2019 videos?
No, I did not. So go for it.
All right. So last year's Into the Box videos were recorded, and they are on sale now for $9.99. Is that the real price? Is it that cheap, Gavin?
Yeah, we're doing a discount. Just let everybody, give some more content for those who are in between jobs or lower jobs, and they're looking for content to learn. And
you're bored, and you're wanting to pick up some stuff, didn't get to make it to Into the Box last year. There you go. Boom. $10, and you can watch all of the videos. So that's through our Vimeo on-demand service. So where do they go to purchase that?
They go to vimeo.com and then on-demand/ITB 2019.
Here we go. There's a big green button that says buy all, $9.99. Stream anytime.
Yep. And it's pretty nice. You just go in there, and you can even download them to your devices too. So if you got a tablet or something, and maybe you're in the backyard with the kids playing or whatever, and you want to watch some videos, you can watch Brad talk as he likes to do.
Got the backyardigans, or you can watch John walk in and off of the camera.
Yep, exactly. So, but yeah, we dropped the price for 2019, and I believe 2018 is the same deal. So I'll get that link and add to the show notes as well. I think it's the same link, but with 2018 on the end of it. I'm going to try it right now.
All right, I just tried to post the link from 2019 in the chat.
Okay.
See if YouTube lets it through.
Yep.
Does YouTube approve?
Yep. So 2018 is not just that one there, so I'm going to have to find it for you guys, and we'll add that to the show notes. So, but yeah, I believe 2018 is discounted as well. So try to give you some extra content for cheap, and hopefully get you excited about 2020, and that way you guys will register for that one as well.
Speaking of 2020 and microservices architecture, we also have this Adobe webinar coming up, Trends and Challenges. So Alicia Dvorak is doing this one,
Looks
and
like
it's
it's
going to be March
tomorrow.
25th. Dang. So when is that? 9 a.m. Pacific,
Yep.
so 11 a.m. my time. Okay. So it's going to be right before the Fusion Reactor one.
Yeah. So Fusion Reactor has theirs basically March 25th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, 12 o'clock is Alicia's Eastern, and then 3 hours later, Fusion Reactor has theirs.
I like how we like half our times are in Pacific and half of them are in Eastern. I think we should just consolidate and do everything in Central. Split the difference. Also, I'm in Central, so I'm selfish
I
and
usually try and
convenient for
put
me.
one or two or three of them just in case people can't do the math because I really stink at this. I've been here like 20 years now and I'm still struggling with these. And
By
then
here, he means the U.S.
yeah, sorry.
All
Yeah,
right. So anyway, the Adobe one discussing microservice trends, architecture challenges. Just reading a little bio here. Applications of organically grown exist in different states.
yep,
Usually inherit a hybrid of a monolith, the addition of services. So this is just kind of talking about how Adobe Cold Fusion gives you tools to break stuff into a microservices architecture. Now, what I'm not sure is if this is really covering any like new features in Cold Fusion 2020, or if it's just kind of a generic like how to use Cold Fusion.
yeah. This is more of a generic one, and actually when they did this one at the I think it was DivCon or something with DivFest up in I think it was in Oakland, the one that Adobe just
Okay,
went to a few weeks back.
yeah,
They did it more generic style. They had some Cold Fusion examples and everything, but it was actually a conference that had more than one language. So it was a lot of
all
it,
right,
just the theory behind it and some implementation.
right
But
on.
I'm sure
And that
that
would be
she's gonna.
appropriate for a non-Cold Fusion conference, just to be a generic session on that, and of course work Cold Fusion on the side. Eric
Yep.
says UTC. Forget about that nonsense. I'd be like, wait, how many hours do I subtract? Is it daylight savings time? Am I 6 behind or 5 behind? Then I wouldn't even show up. I'd be like, screw it, I quit.
Yeah.
Also,
So
can we call it Zulu? It used to be Zulu time.
is that what it is?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
It's just another name I've heard the UTC referred to as
Yep.
Central European time. What if we took a vote? I'm actually curious, like what percentage of our listeners are in what time zone? We should do like a vote where all the Modernize or Die podcast listeners get to vote, and whoever the most number of people live in whatever time zone will announce all things in that time zone. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know. We may have a lot of people in Central European time.
Well, we
You got
might.
to
Yeah.
appease the masses, right?
Yep. So if you want to sign up for that one, you can go to cfwebinar-trends.meetus.adobeevents.com, or I just posted the link in the chat a little bit ago, and we'll also have that in the show notes for you. And as we mentioned, Fusion Reactor has their webinar tomorrow, which is installing Fusion Reactor in dynamic environments. And this session will cover how to automate the installation of Fusion Reactor via Docker, CommandBox, and also any other questions that you guys have about Fusion Reactor and how to install it.
So here's the thing, Gavin. I don't even know if you know it yet. I don't know if
Nope.
they announced it. I'm going to be a special guest on. I don't know if I'll be special, but I'm going to be a guest on the Fusion Reactor webinar tomorrow.
Okay, well I'll
Um,
put that in here with special guests.
which is with uh with special guest. Which is why I was curious if it overlapped the Adobe webinar because I was like, I think going on at the same time. So the Charlie Earhart's helping out with the Fusion Reactor stuff, and Mikey they bugged me and said, hey, you want to come talk about the CommandBox portions of this? And I was like, yeah, I love to talk and flap my mouth, so sure. um, so anyway, I'll be helping out with that tomorrow, which is 2 p.m. Central for you Centralites.
Yep, or lunchtime for me.
Lunchtime for Gavin.
Yep. And so while we're talking about times, Charlie said that he's Central Time, even though many cities that are west of him are actually on Eastern Time. Don't get me started on weirdness.
How is this possible? I think I had floated the theory once. What if the world just got rid of time zones and it was always the same time o'clock anywhere in the world, and just depending on where you lived, you would just get up at a different time. I
Hey,
think that might actually be easier because when you scheduled a meeting, it would just be like meetings at 8 p.m. and it wouldn't be like what time zone. It'd be like the world all has 8 p.m. at the same time.
the
I don't
weird
know.
part would be is that most people compare bedtimes, which would not be confusing. And kids have enough trouble reading a digital clock these days, let alone a normal clock. And if you threw in random times. It'd be crazy.
I have no sympathy for the so-called kids, Gavin.
Yeah. Time zones are a nightmare. I agree,
Darn
Gary.
Generation Z or whatever letter we've made it to now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I saw a headline yesterday that was like, people are blaming the millennials for not taking the COVID-19 quarantine seriously, and the millennials' response is, "Whoa, it's not us. It's the Generation Z guys you guys want to complain about." I don't know. Nobody even knows who to complain about these days. It's just the kids.
Yeah, the kids.
Kids coding in Node and Python. What do they know?
Yeah. So that's tomorrow. You can register on the FusionReactor.com site. They have a blog post, and we've got the link, which I don't think Brad copied yet, so I'm going to beat him to it.
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Okay. And then if you're not sick of webinars by then, on Friday, Michael Bourne is doing one on CB Elasticsearch. So that is 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, and 8 Pacific. And I don't know the rest. I guess GMT -5. So, yeah. So Michael Bourne is going to be talking about CB Elasticsearch and giving you a rundown of how to get started with that and why you might want to consider using CB Elasticsearch. And you can register for that one on autosolutions.com/events/webinars, where you can also see our previous webinars we've done. So, okay. And then there's another one. Oh my gosh, more webinars.
But wait, there's more. Call now and receive 2.
So yeah, Alicia is doing another Adobe webinar, Journey Through the Adobe ColdFusion Performance Monitoring Tool. So if you guys haven't used that...
It's Journey to the Adobe ColdFusion Performance Monitoring Tool.
Yep, so in April 9th, so that's a couple weeks away now. But she's got the session basically is all demos, no slides. It's just going to be walking through the performance monitoring tool, show you how different things work, and she's got a bunch of code that'll run and try and trigger off events so you can see them popping up in the performance monitoring tool. So if you guys are using Adobe ColdFusion, this one's included. I can't remember if you have to have Enterprise for it, though. It's one of those ones that I don't remember what licensing.
I bet Charlie knows.
Yep, Charlie, give us an answer and we'll share it with those from the chat.
The question was, do you have to have Adobe ColdFusion Enterprise license to get the performance monitoring tool? Does it come with standard? I don't believe it was purchasable like separately. I think it just came with your license.
Yeah, I just don't know which license. So,
see, when I had played with it, I had just like downloaded the trial of it, I think, and so I hadn't messed with the license.
Okay. So we also had a couple of webinars last week in case you missed it. So John Ferrar had a webinar about ColdFusion Community Education 2020 and beyond. And so our show notes from last week, we have the link where you could register. If you register, you can actually get the previous recording as well. So even though that happened last week on Tuesday, you can still get that recording. And actually Rick Sheaf did a presentation for the Adobe about 2020. And I have not found the recording for the link yet. The link for the recording yet, sorry. So if somebody has that, let me know, and I'll try and get that added to the show notes for everybody.
All right, there's that link for John Ferrar. It's just kind of ugly, but if you register, you can get the recording.
Yep, I have to watch that one still. I missed that.
WebinarNinja.com.
Yep. Okay, so that's our webinars. We should have a whole session just for damn webinars now.
We have a lot of webinars. Well, hey, nobody has anything to do right now, so...
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot more.
I've been thinking about taking some of this extra time to get some screencasts out for CommandBox 5. One of the things in the back of my plate that I need to do.
Yep. Okay, so also we had some releases. So CommandBox Docker 3.0 and 3.0.1 release.
Whenever you see a 0.1 patch release that comes out like right after a main release, you're like, oh, had a few bugs there in that first one, didn't you?
Yep.
Or at least a couple things you're like, crap, we should have done this as well. 0.1 release.
Yep.
That's what I did with CommandBox.
Yep, and so the Docker image for CommandBox did the same thing. So John Clausen and the team has been working hard on that, and they announced 3.0.0 release. Excuse me, I might have to sneeze here.
Oh, darn COVID-19. So the 0.1 release, make sure you pull that. It was a nasty little bug that had snuck into the 3.0. Snuck into the 3.0 release of the Docker containers that it would get a little confused on whether or not you were using a custom rewrite, and your server wouldn't start. It would have some confusion there and how to load the rewrite file. I think the workaround I heard John say is if you set like the headless environment variable to false, it would work around it. But just make sure you pull the 3.0.1 release of the CommandBox Docker images, and I think John has that all straightened out.
Cool. So
But
yeah,
John didn't put a blog up for the 301. He just announced it in some of the social media channels.
yeah.
But there's a link to the 300, which has kind of a list of all the new features. There's some compatibility changes in this one. So if you're doing anything in your Docker builds that are referencing like the folder paths of where stuff lives, this one kind of moved a few things around. So that's all documented in that link as far as where all the directories are right now, and you can make any changes that you need to.
Yep, very cool.
And he's also incorporating like the Lucy Light builds and stuff as well. He has like 80 zillion tags here. And I'd seen some confusion as well, just on what versions of the latest Docker containers use Java 11 and what versions use Java 8. So I figured to point this out real quick. There's some people that expected all the new Docker images to use Java 11, but the problem is there's still enough people on, Adobe ColdFusion 11 or Lucy 5.2 or something that doesn't work yet on Java 11. So the like out of the box tag that you get still has JDK 8. And then as he talks about here in the blog post, if you want JDK 11, then he has a list of tags that include that automatically. So anyway, it's all documented. Just make sure you skim over that so you're using the right tag and you're getting the right Java version and all that good stuff.
Yep. And that's another reason not to use latest. People don't use latest.
Unless you like to live on the edge. Luis likes to live on the edge.
Yeah, but they call it bleeding edge for a reason, because it ends up to be a really bloody mess.
Yep. Bloody mess, just like Harry after he finally defeated Voldemort. We finally watched the last movie. My family's been working our way through the Harry Potter movies. Harry Potter. Finally finished them last night.
Okay, no spoilers.
They all die. They all die in the end. My daughter was very disappointed because every time she would get a favorite character in Harry Potter, they would die. Like the next book, she's like, "Oh no, they killed off so and so. Why?" I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
Don't get attached to him."
Okay, so we also have a reminder.
Dan says he hits an iceberg at the end. I just saw Titanic play recently. Anyway, okay. State of the CF Union. Go on, Gavin.
Yep.
Let us
So
derail
just
you.
a reminder that the State of the CF Union survey is out, and so we're getting responses. I think Michaela announced that we have about 400 responses so far.
400? Did it go up? Jeez.
I think it had 376, 400, somewhere around there.
Wow,
I believe
great.
so. So yeah, so we got a lot of responses, but we'd need some more. So if you can share that link, it's terratech.com/state-of-the-CF-union-2020. So I'll copy that.
Or screw that. Here's the link and come into the chat. Come on, people. We've got like over 3,000 people in the CFML Slack team. There might be some like fake accounts in there. 3,400. I know we can get more than 500 people to come take this silly little survey. So
yep.
Get on it.
It's not just silly, though. We do actually use that data to help us build tools that audit, and I'm sure Lucy and Adobe pay attention to some of that stuff as well. So it's useful for everybody. So definitely share that, and if there's something missing off the list, let them know as well, and they can add that option and go from there. But it's definitely an interesting one, and I still want to see the over time stats so we can see how things have grown over time. Because I know we've been doing this survey for a long time now, right? Do you know how many years it's been around for?
I don't know how many years it's been, but it's definitely been a while. I mean, one of the first times I remember using the survey was when Luis wanted to drop ColdFusion 9 back in ColdBox 4, I believe. And I had talked Luis out of it because of the data in the State of the CF Union survey, and there were like 20%, 1 in 5 people still had ColdFusion 9 servers in play. And so whenever the heck that was, it's at least that old.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty old. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I'd like to see the stats over time to see if CommandBox usage go up or, and see some of the, different frameworks go up and down. So. Okay, so now we're on to conferences. So
what's left of them anyway?
Yep. So Adobe CF Summit 2020 East was canceled, in case you didn't know it. The pre-conference workshop, the Order Solutions, was canceled for that. The post-conference workshops for that was canceled. Adobe is planning to have a developer week sometime soon. So basically a week of online presentations, similar to a little virtual conference, but no information is being released about that as of yet. So. That leads us with Into the Box 2020, which we already gave you a breakdown. So it will be a virtual conference. No workshops announced at this time. We will be doing them, just they'll be ad hoc later, not attached to the conference. The tickets are on sale now. They're $199, discounted down from the previous pricing. You can register at intothebox.org, and then we'll be recording the sessions, and they'll be available for you to watch live or after the fact. So that's Into the Box 2020. Now CF Summit West and CF Camp are to be announced. We'll just have to see what happens with everything going on. I'm sure there'll be more virtual stuff going on. There are a lot of virtual conferences starting up just because of the current situation. Some for JavaScript, some for just developers in general. So definitely check those out. We don't have any there, but if anyone has some that they recommend us talking about, send us a tweet, send us the link through, and we'll add them to our list here for you guys. Okay, conferences done. Blogs, tweets, and videos of the week.
So this is one that James Moberg's been talking about a while, the same site cookie functionality, which is something I think was requested quite some time ago. And if I recall, I believe this does this affect the session cookies, or is it the ability to set it on any cookie?
Well, I think it's about the session ones, but
yeah. So I'd like to use the same site cookie attribute with CF cookie. That's right. And so this was created back, actually, almost 1 year ago to the day, March 22nd. 2 years ago to the day, 2018. So 2 years ago, this ticket was put in, and it didn't make it in the last Adobe update, but it has been released now as a hotfix. So if you were just dying to be able to use the same site attribute on your cookies in Adobe ColdFusion, there is a hotfix out now, which is built for Adobe ColdFusion 2016 and 2018. That provides this functionality. So that just, I think, was announced this morning, if I recall.
Yeah, and I have a blog post later on where Charlie was talking about that, and he updated the blog posts with the newer information too. So we'll get to that and give you a link to that one as well. So
excellent. And make sure you're on CommandBox 5 if you want to play with it, because Adobe had a bug which I worked around because Adobe closed my stinking ticket. They're like, we're not going to fix this. It's your problem. So I had to work around their stupid bug. There's a bug that if you're in CommandBox 4X and you try to apply a hotfix, they load the jars in a random order and it doesn't work right. So that was rectified in CommandBox 5. You can actually use Adobe hotfixes and they'll load the jars in the right order. So a little side note if you want to play with that same site stuff.
Cool. Okay, next on the list we have a blog from Ben Adel about copying data from one table to another using inner join update query in MySQL. So this is pretty interesting. This is a series that he's been working on, converting his 15 years of HTML content over to Markdown. And so basically one of the approaches he's doing is taking the data and copying it to another table, intermediate table, and then once he's actually done all the manipulation of that off the production server, you can do that locally or whatnot, and then take the intermediate table back and then copy it in. And so what he's doing an update query with the inner join. And so he says he forgets the syntax for that, so he thought he'd put a little demo for future reference for himself and everybody else. And so it's kind of a nice little blog post here. I'll share my screen so you guys can see. And so he has the SQL here, basically pulling it in. You'll see this empty content markdown, and then he has his cleanup table here, and then works through the scripts. So it's kind of nice. It shows the process and only updating fields that don't currently have it. But yeah, it's a nice, very thorough, as Ben's usually is. It goes through the whole process. So if you guys are looking to do some type of migration or something, or just wanting to do some complicated updates, that's pretty useful.
This post comes with an epilogue. Ooh, fancy.
Epilogue. Yep, very cool.
There you go. That's a nice little reference for some MySQL syntax.
Yep. And then next we had a blog post about Charlie, and this actually popped up right after the podcast last week, where everybody was updating their their Adobe sites and wondering why things were breaking. So Charlie released a blog post, 3 reasons your site may break and how to fix them after applying the March 2020
Number 2
update.
will amaze you.
Yeah. So basically, as usual, the second step right after the update, is you basically need to redo your configuration for your web server. That's long
I
story
actually
short.
searched the tech note and I couldn't find, unless they edited it since last week, I couldn't find anywhere where it explicitly said rebuild your connector. I know it's kind of a given. You usually do it if you know what's good for you.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. Did we talk about Ghost Cat last week? I've lost track.
Sorry. Do we talk about what?
Did we talk about Ghost Cat last week in
I
the
don't
podcast?
know.
When did the Adobe updates drop? What day was that?
It came out the day that we were actually doing the podcast, so it was announced right before we went live. But none of the feedback or backlash came out till after. So what's up with Ghost Cat? I don't know what this Ghost Cat thing is.
I mean, so the updates from Adobe are primarily a security update for the so-called Ghost Cat exploit. I think it's really hilarious when exploits or viruses all get like a fancy little like clever name and an icon. Remember the SSL one that was like heart bleed, the
Yeah.
heart bleed. And everybody had the little icon of the heart with blood dripping. Um, it's just funny. But anyway, at first I was like, oh my gosh, like, there's this new exploit. It affects people using AJP. And I was a little disappointed almost when I realized that it wasn't really a bug nearly as much as it was AJP just doing exactly what it was always designed to do. And the fact that if, you don't actually lock down your servers properly, then, people can potentially do malicious things. So the way it is most people are used to like an HTTP listener. Like if you just use regular Apache with HTTP proxy. The way your HTTP listeners are always defined is they're kind of locked into a web root. You have a document root, and then you say, any path that comes into the URL will be looked at relative to this document root. So, when you go to a website, you can't just ask for files anywhere on the C drive of the server. You ask for files that are all relative to the document root. That's kind of part and parcel of your HTTP listeners. The way that AJP works, and I had never really thought about this or realized it until recently, but AJP is a protocol that's largely used between IIS and a backend web server. The Adobe Cold Fusion built-in connector is essentially a modified AJP listener. And the listener isn't really part of Cold Fusion or Lucy for that matter. The listener is part of your servlet container, Tomcat or Undertow or Jetty, whatever it is that's hosting the war. It's what actually listens on the AJP port, typically 8009. And so your web server is proxying the incoming HTTP request over the AJP protocol to the servlet container, which then runs the servlet, which is Cold Fusion or Lucy. So AJP is kind of a consolidated binary protocol. It combines HTTPS and HTTP down to just the same thing. But the way that AJP works is it doesn't request a relative path inside of a kind of hard-coded web root. It just provides a fully absolute path to a JSP typically. Anywhere on the hard drive of the server. So the AJP protocol, you connect to it and you say, give me C:/random folder path / this JSP, and the protocol says, okay, coming right up, right? So what happens is if you have the AJP listener enabled in your server container, and if it's listening on external ports or external IPs, not just localhost, and if the port the AJP listener is listening on is exposed to the outside internet, or maybe just compromised machines inside of your network, then if all those ifs are passed, then a malicious user could connect directly to the AJP protocol, to the AJP port on your server, bypassing IIS or whatever the web server you might have in front of it, and they can directly request any path off of your server, which means they could hit pages that they're not supposed to outside of the web root, or if they're lucky enough to figure out file paths, you might have a web app that allows you to upload files, and they could upload a malicious JSP. And if they could figure out where the temporary directory was that got uploaded to, then they could hit the AJP listener and they could say, hey, run this file for me. There's a whole lot of ifs in place that it takes to exploit Ghost Cat. So like a CommandBox server, for instance, AJP is off by default. So there's nothing to even worry about unless you're using AJP and binding it to external IPs and not blocking it by the firewall. I hate to say when I'm not worried about exploit, but once I figured out all the ifs and that it really wasn't a bug per se, it's just the AJP protocol doing the thing it does. And hey, idiots, you should not just leave it exposed to the internet. I was kind of like, oh, well, It's not as bad, but still, the potential is there. So that's basically what the Adobe fixes are all about. Now, like I said, it doesn't really affect Adobe Cold Fusion proper, nor Lucy. It's really all the servlet container, because that's where the AJP listener is. So what Adobe did in their updates was basically what every single servlet container has been doing out there, which is change the AJP listener default to be local host only. So you would already right off the bat have to be on the physical machine to even be able to connect to it. And the second thing is, instead of making AJP just be like a wide open door, if it's like, hey, anybody want to connect to my port? Just tell me what you want. It's like a McDonald's drive-through. You don't have to pay, right? They set up a secret, which is sort of like a really crude form of authentication, where the listener says, I only accept connections that bear this special token that tells me that you're legit. And then your proxy in, which is IIS or Apache, has to have the same secret key or token configured. So every time your proxy makes a connection and says, hey, AJP port, I've got a request for you to pass off to the servlet, it says, okay, does the token match? All right, you're let through. So the two things are basically the default ports you bind on and then setting up the token. But that token bit is wherein the issue lies, because what happens is that if you don't rebuild your connectors on Adobe Cold Fusion, the update sets up a token on the listener side, and unless that also gets put in IIS, all of a sudden your entire site stops working, which is basically what happened with like Ben Nadel's site, right? He had a hosted blog. He applies the update, his entire site basically goes offline. He can't hit anything because IIS can no longer talk to the AJP listener, because it's like, oh, that's not the right secret key. I'm not listening to you. So it's an easy fix, but it's obviously very confusing for people. They apply an update and usually updates just kind of work, and then it's like your entire site goes offline. So I'm glad Charlie put that post out, because a lot of people, I don't think, understand all the things going on and what's being updated.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, too, like you said, it's now defaults to local IP. So if you have a server in your network that actually has different servers that it connects to, so IIS is separate from your ACF box, then now it won't listen to it either, because it's not listening for non-local ports.
Exactly, yeah. So, if you have IIS on a different VM reaching across, then that's not going to work with the default configuration. Absolutely.
Yep. So Charlie has 2 blog posts. I've shared them both in there. So one is on the Cold Fusion portal, but he also has a longer version on his careheart.org site. So
there you go.
Definitely a lot of great information in there for you guys to check out.
For Lucy users, Lucy hasn't really put out any particular fix, because again, it's not anything Lucy directly would deal with. But the latest version of Tomcat that they bundle with the installer essentially allows for the secret. So if you're using like mod CFML, they've come out with an update that also supports the secret key. Bond code supports the secret key. So whatever you're doing is just a bit more manual in the Lucy world, but you can still lock down against it. If you're curious about configuring a secret key with CommandBox, the version of Undertow that CommandBox 5 ships with doesn't support a secret key. So you can still bind it to localhost, block it with your firewall. But if you want to have it open and have a secret key, that'll probably come in an update very soon. Undertow just added support for secret keys on their AJP listeners. So as soon as we bundle that version of Undertow with CommandBox, then you'll be able to use that. But in the meantime, bind to localhost, make sure you block it at the firewall, and that's your good line of defense.
Yep. Okay, so done with that for now.
Enough about Ghost Cat.
Yep. So next, the blog from James Moberg, which is something else that could break everything. So Cold Fusion.
Whenever I see SSL stuff, I'm like, oh crap, what's going to break now?
Yeah. So this blog post is a Cold Fusion test for new Amazon Trust Services certificates. And so he received an email notification from Amazon that S3 and CloudFront were migrating default certificates to the Amazon Trust Services in March 2021. And so as a Cold Fusion developer, he uses S3. We use S3 for ForgeBox and other things. A lot of people using S3. So he basically wanted to go through and test these new certificates and make sure that everything doesn't break next year when they do their thing. So this blog post sort of walks through a little test for that, and it's something to be aware of. But it is March 2021, so we have time. But as usual, everyone leaves it to the last minute. So I know that everyone authorized.net, when they changed all their SSL certificates and their URLs and all that stuff, I got a lot of customers calling me like the day after saying it's all not working.
So running his little sample on TryCF on Lucy 5, it tests 5 different root certs and 4 of them fail.
Oh, really?
So if Amazon was to, if I understand this correctly, these are basically new root certs that, your certifications will trust. But what this means is if you need to make an HTTP request to any domain that uses a cert that points to this as their root cert, if that cutover happened today, 4 out of 5 of these domains wouldn't even work.
Yeah. So hopefully those updates are going to take time, and by the time it gets around to then, things will be working. But I always worry about that stuff because
there will always be workarounds. Wow, look at this. On 2018, they all work. So here, right. When there's always workarounds, right? You can always manually trust these certs. So I'm kind of worried about Lucy in this regard. Adobe and Lucy handle this differently, right? Adobe just defaults to whatever the key store. Because your JVM and even your operating system have like a default key store, which is like, these are the root certs that are, we trust all these. These guys, they're all good. We trust every single one of these, and any cert that is trusted by these, or whichever way the trust goes, will follow the chain up, and as long as it reaches the trusted cert, it's like good. When you get the whole giant freak out in your browser that's like, oh my gosh, we don't trust this, that's when the root cert is something that's not trusted. So Adobe Cold Fusion doesn't ship its own list of its own key stores as trusted certs. It just defaults to whatever your JRE has. So if you're on a vaguely recent version of Java, you pretty much always have the latest versions. Lucy, for various reasons, because it has some additional functionality to automatically install stuff, it bundles its own copy of the key store. The problem is Lucy is absolutely horrible at ever updating their stupid key store. And then the key stores used to almost never change, right? You rarely saw new root certs come into place. It was like, yeah, whatever, we'll update it 10 years from now, it'll be fine. The problem is SSL's been changing a lot recently, and Lucy will have tickets just rot away in their backlog. Years of people being like, hey, we can't use these new GoDaddy certs because the key store that Lucy ships with is like 7 years old. Can we update it? So I'm actually a little worried because like Lucy needs to like get their butts in gear when it comes to this stuff. I'll be really honest, because it bites people in the butt like over and over again. So Lucy needs to actually somebody should probably create a ticket for it, because it might be like 17 years before Lucy gets around to updating the little key store. So anyway, I hate to rant about that, but like this has been like a super big pain point for people, and Lucy's been really bad about it because they had this like crazy old key stores they bundle, and they never ever 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 update them. And so I hope this doesn't turn into a pain. When's the cutover date on this, Gavin?
it says March 2021, so we have a year.
Basically a year. Ugh. There's other parts to this conversation, which is there's a ticket that Joe Gooch put in quite a while ago, which suggested that Lucy implement a workaround that would actually like completely solve this. You can create a trust manager where you have like a parent-child relationship, and you have like one key store, and you look for the cert there, and if you don't find it, you have like a parent key store, and you're like, okay, let me look here before I fail. And so Lucy could do that, where it has its own little key store, and it can auto import crap into it. And then if it's not found, it could say, let me go look at the JRE's key store. Oh, I found it here because they're on a recent JRE. We're all good to go. Lucy doesn't do that. And the ticket for that has been just growing dust and mold and mildew in the Lucy backlog. If I recall, Joe Gooch even tried to send a pull request to Lucy for this, and it just fell on deaf ears, which just irks me to no end. But anyway, yeah, I'm not really worried about Adobe so much as long as people keep modern JREs, since Adobe just uses JRE's key store. I am worried about Lucy if they don't take this seriously. So we'll see how that plays out. And we should make sure there's some tickets and some racket made on the Lucy end for that to be dealt with. Yeah, thanks, James Moberg, for pointing this out to the community, though, because
it's a big deal. I mean, imagine if all the S3 stuff broke. I mean, if ForgeBox stuff breaks and everything else. I mean, yeah, we've got to make sure that we're on top of that, because that could cause some major problems for a lot of people.
Yep.
Okay.
Enough ranting. I'm ranting about everything today.
Let's say something positive about Gavin. Lucy, huh?
Say something positive. I say a lot of positive stuff about Lucy. Adobe thinks that's all I ever say about Lucy, but if they listened to me, they would know.
Yeah. Well, apparently, Lucy actually released something. Was Zach Spitzer released
Lucy
something?
didn't release nothing. Zach Spitzer released something.
So he released the Lucy log viewer. So he's finally got around to publishing this on ForgeBox. Yep, that's what I was going to say.
I thought this has been around for a long time. Or did he just spice it up or something.
Well, he's done some more features, I guess. So aggregates all logs from a single combined view, search by date or string, auto refreshing polling, filter by
Your link is
severity or
broken,
force.
Gavin.
The link
Your link
that
in your
oh,
link in the show notes.
well,
Did he rename the package?
he
Oh, he
must have.
did. He renamed it from Lucy Log Viewer to a GUID.
Oh, that's not good. So,
Well, it's not bad, but I hate it when people do that.
but yeah, so the link in his blog post is wrong, and the one we shared is wrong. But um, apparently, it is available there somewhere. But it's got some nice features and whatever. So
I mean,
so,
Adobe Cold Fusion has like a built-in log viewer. All the out of the box log files. You can go into the web administrator. You can view the logs. Lucy has like twice as many log files as Adobe because it has the silly web and server context. But there's no way to like view them in the admin. And if you're on a remote server you don't have file system access to, it's a total pain in the butt. So this basically fills that need there.
so
Which is pretty nice. Oh, he also resized the image on his README. I looked at this package yesterday, and the image was like flying off the edge of ForgeBox, like overlapping the boxes. I was thinking to myself, we should probably fix our CSS so packages can't do that. So you should be able to install this. I haven't actually tested it. I've seen the blog posts. I've read about it. You should be able to install this from your Lucy administrator. It should show up as long as you're on Lucy 5.3 or later. It that automatically pulls all ForgeBox Lucy extensions in. Or if you use this ugly GUID in the URL, you should be able to use the JVM args. Everything's a sore point with me, Gavin. I argued with Misha years ago and begged him not to use GUIDs as the like primary IDs for packages because I thought it was the most like worthless, ugliest, hideous thing you could possibly imagine. I'm like, please, Misha, for the love of all things beautiful, like don't use these GUIDs. Like, I mean, because the whole thing is he wanted uniqueness. I get it, right? He wanted to make sure that two extensions on two different providers wouldn't have the same ID. But fine, right? Like use like for the reverse domain name syntax or something, com.spitzer.logviewer, right? That would be unique and it would actually be readable. But no, we have GUIDs and a manifest file. I hate everything about it.
good times.
We're supposed to be saying good things about Lucy, weren't we? So many things that I'm annoyed about that I wish I could go back in time and change.
Yep.
Okay.
So next on the list we have a blog post, and this is an interesting one. Yeah, but we want to share it. So Ben Adel, obviously big community member, had an interesting post where he says, "As a man, I could be a better example than I have been." And so, I guess this all started from years ago at a conference. A woman came up to him and said, "I really appreciate what you do, but I think you're a terrible person." And so I guess at first he was amused at the sentiment, but the long story short is that when he was younger, he'd like to try and get people's attention and get a rise out of people, and made some blog posts that referenced women's physical characteristics and hot or not style ratings, and that was kind of like the
well,
thing.
his blog was called Kinky Solutions, and I mean everything was kind of themed in a sort of womanizing fashion.
Yeah, and if you've ever met him, and that's kind of what he says here, it's like he's an introverted person, shy, doesn't want to offend anybody, and he's a super nice person and everything. But by the blog post like this, it wasn't coming across that way. And so, over time, a lot of people have sort of said different things to him, and it's really, in this whole process of converting his blog posts, he went back and realized how nasty some of them were. And I mean, he even said it made himself sick to see that type of stuff, because obviously he's been writing this blog for 15, 20 years, and he's grown and evolved, and is a better person. And so so this blog post is basically taking ownership of that and realizing that he's different now, and but what he's got on his blog is still out there for people to see. And so he's removed all those blog posts and is going to be updating them and everything.
He moved about 250 posts.
Yep. And so
this took a lot of guts for Ben to say that. And Ben hasn't blogged like that in years.
Yeah.
But all the old content was still out there. And I mean, I would see tweets where people would find it and they'd be like, what kind of douche is this guy? And it was stuff from like 10, 15 years ago. So
yeah. And so as he's basically took ownership and says, I was just trying to have fun and whatnot, but I was wrong. I made bad decisions, and and so was a really thoughtful blog post, and I think he's bravo for taking ownership in it. And I know a lot of people really appreciate him and support him on Twitter, and so I mean, he's a big community member and he does a lot for the community, but this is an extra step, and so yeah, so it was a good blog post, Ben, and like I said, I think this just shows the true you. Like I said, I've met him several times at conferences, and he's the nicest guy in the world. He wouldn't hurt anybody. And for those of you that don't know, I mean, he has a scholarship set up where he actually donates to a lot of different countries and women in different countries and everything. He's been doing the Kiva donations for a long time. So he's supported 250 something women with scholarships and stuff, and that type of thing. But not everyone knows all those types of things. So anyway, so we wanted to point it out there that, yeah.
Yep. Lots of respect for Ben. We love you, man. And this was a really great step to take.
Yeah. So, and yeah, definitely worth the read if you guys want to, see that. But we have other blogs from Ben as well. So we'll go into those as well. So back to the coding styles of Ben. He's also doing
white
some stuff.
Space. I need to make a meme. The Toy Story. It's like, I see white space everywhere.
Yeah. So he also did a blog post about avoiding self-closing iframe tags using HTML pass. So I guess because XML is valid to have self-closing for anything, HTML doesn't allow you to do that. So when he went through and was passing everything and trying to create the markdown for it, he realized certain things like iframes were all self-closing. So he had to make some workarounds to get that to work. So that blog post sort of talks through that section there, and he's got a whole series, and we'll see a few more as we go through. But it's pretty interesting. Like I said, 15 years of blog posts, all of his blog posts, converting them. That's a major work.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I still don't quite understand what this blog post is about, though. I mean, I get it involves something about iframes and something about self-closing. Was the problem that they didn't parse right? Or what exactly was
So basically, because valid XML, if there's no children tags, it would just turn it into a self-closing tag. And so the iframes would show up as an HTML as a self-closing tag, and when he went to actually view it, it would be broken because iframes and HTML can't be self-closing. They have to have an open tag and a closing tag, even if there is no content. So.
Oh, I see.
So
XML. I skimmed this post the other day, but I didn't quite catch what it was. Okay, that's right. So he puts an HTML comment between the opening and closing iframe tags just to trick the parser into thinking it's not an empty tag.
Yep. Because the HTML pass is trying to be, optimized.
I don't think I realized iframes couldn't be self-closing. I mean, I rarely use them, to be honest. It's been years since I've used an iframe, other than just copying and pasting embed code, in which case I don't really pay attention. But
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yep, it's just the little edge cases, but I say it's good. I know that Ben, blog posts a lot of this stuff just so later on he'll remember as well. And the funny thing is, I don't know how many times you do it, Brad, but I'm searching for something online. Quite often, the blog post I find is mine. And I haven't even written that many blogs. Imagine Ben, every blog post he searches for is probably him.
Yeah, I've definitely done that. I've found my own tickets or blog posts, and yeah, for sure, I haven't written nearly a fraction of the content that Ben has.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's really good. I mean, and that's one reason we recommend people blog, because you will forget something you've learned. So, if you blog it, other people can use it too, but you'll find it down the road, and it'll be helpful. Okay. We also had a tweet from Kai Koenig. So,
we do.
Yep. He said
one positive of the pandemic. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
Virtual conferences.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny because, a lot of people don't like traveling to the U.S. on a regular basis anyway, or it's too hard to make it to certain conferences when they live in different parts, and, it's so hard to get around. But, yeah, one of the positives of the pandemic is virtual conferences everywhere, and so Kai's pretty happy that, he says, as sad as the whole pandemic situation is, conferences he'd never be able to attend because he's in the U.S., because they're in the USA or whatnot, and travel is too expensive, now becomes accessible. So he's happy that Into the Box is going virtual, and he'll be joining us. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, normally getting all the way to Into the Box from New Zealand is a pricey ticket. So there's places that just weren't cost effective from to go before. So
Yep. So yeah. So hopefully that'll be a reason that we get more people attending Into the Box this year, actually, because of the online nature. And
Hopefully, I mean, because our registrations for Into the Box basically just tanked. Like people stopped signing up about the time the quarantine stuff was going crazy, which is completely understandable. So when we announced the virtual stuff and reworked it all, we've been having registrations pouring in every day. So I'm very pleased to see that, because for a while it was kind of like just super disappointing. Like, oh man, like nobody's going to come to the box. What are we going to do? But there's
yep.
people signing up that otherwise probably wouldn't have even been able to come when it wasn't virtual. So
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that an in-person conference have that a virtual conference doesn't have. And I mentioned before, when you're presenting, it's nice to be able to get feedback from the audience so you can see if they got that joke or not, or if they're asleep or not.
nobody got the joke, Gavin.
Yeah,
Nobody gets your jokes.
I know, it's terrible. I just laugh at myself, but that's okay. But yeah, so there's other things that people want there, the networking and everything too. So we're trying to come up with some little things that we can do to make the virtual conference more interactive too. One thing about Zoom, if we're going to use, Zoom or whatever too, is you can have breakout rooms. So we might be able to set up some little Q&A type rooms and whatnot. We might have office hours. We're going to try and do some extra things to try and make it a little more interactive. Maybe just have a general just chit chat room during the lunch breaks. If people want to sit there and have their lunch, they can just chit chat openly.
Chit chat, chitty chitty chit chat.
So we're going to look at some of those options there. I'm not sure exactly what we're doing, so don't hold me to any of this. But we want to try and add some of those networking things back in, because that's
Once
one
we
thing
announced
about
it in the podcast, isn't it like wizarding law at that point?
only for the people that are actually paying attention. So nobody heard us.
Okay, you heard nothing.
Okay. And so we obviously had a blog post that Into the Box is going virtual. So not viral, but virtual.
Every time I see that headline, I read "going viral."
Yeah, no, I think it's a nice play on on words there. So yep. So we got again May 7th to 8th, $199. So we have the obligatory blog post saying that we understand there's an issue out there and we got to do what we can to make it better. So Fusion Reactor also had a blog post on database monitoring. So
I didn't even see this one.
yeah, it snuck up on me too. It was actually posted last week, but so it just gives you
By admin. The
Yep.
user named admin posted this one.
Yep. So it goes into a little more detail about what the database monitoring is available in Fusion Reactor. So it talks about some of that, and so gives you what database monitoring is, advantages, performance, etc. So lots of different things. Gives you the breakdown. So it's a pretty nice blog post just to walk through. Again, we like Fusion Reactor. It's a great tool. Many hours being spent in here trying to find out why this query took so long, or why I have so many of those queries running in the first place. So yeah, nice little blog post if you guys want to get into.
I used Fusion Reactor just yesterday to improve the performance of a page on one of our client sites. It was taking just forever to load over our VPN, and I look in Fusion Reactor and I see there's like 1,500 individual queries running. And Fusion Reactor shows me what the queries are, and it's a whole bunch of updates. Update this row, update this row. It's really simple updates. It's resetting a status, but it did 1,500 individual update one row at a time. And I was like, oh, that's why the page is so slow. So using the knowledge I had from Fusion Reactor, I went and I found the code and I refactored it to update all the rows in a single query, and the page loaded instantly after that. I mean, the Fusion Reactor is such a natural part of my workflow, because what happened was I was working on my client site. I hit the page. I'm like, is that not loaded yet? What's it been 10 seconds? Next thing I'm doing, Fusion Reactor opening, active request. What are we doing? Running queries? Oh, how many? Oh, geez, 1,500 queries. I mean, database monitoring is just it's like that. When I have a page that's taking a long time and I think it's database, I go to Fusion Reactor and it tells me this is what's happening, you idiot, and then I go fix the code.
Yeah, definitely a big plus. Yeah, we've done a lot of work on that lately. A lot of legacy migration. That's one of the big things you'll go through and just see what is it actually doing. So.
What on earth is it doing?
So another blog post here from Charlie about addressing the same site cookie issues before Adobe offers an update. And so there was an update here, so he actually does update the blog post. So Adobe does address the problem now. They have that little hot fix. But before that, there was information in there as well. So, what is the same site cookie issue? What can you do? And then it actually links to Jane Mosberg's UDF, his user-defined function that he created. So if you guys are looking at that, you may want to look through this blog post there as well. Again, thanks Charlie for sharing that information. I like Charlie, he brings all the information together and puts it in one place, because sometimes you can find it, but you got to piece it together yourself. But a lot of times Charlie doesn't write a lot of the articles; he'll just bring it all together and present it in a way that you can just, solve your problem. Yep, exactly. Okay, we also had one from Ben, again, dealing with HTML pass and how. Well, this is a great picture on his website here. Here's some of the troublemakers. But
I didn't get that picture. I got a different picture.
Reading XML values from XML text values from the XML document produced by HTML Pass and Lucy. He said that originally they were escaped HTML entities like this. Oops. But then when you basically pull out the HTML text, it's the unencoded entities. So he wanted to try and get them back, because obviously he was converting them over to Markdown. He still wanted those HTML entities there, so he had to work through the process of, basically going through and getting the entities back.
Out of curiosity, why did he need it to be HTML encoded as part of the Markdown?
I think it was because some of the greater than or less than signs would mess up his HTML. And so,
but if you wanted to escape characters that are meta characters from Markdown, wouldn't you apply a Markdown escaping to it, not an HTML escape? Or does Markdown use HTML escaping?
Well, a lot of times Markdown allows you just to put HTML in it. I think a lot of the time that's what he was doing. So
I have seen that where Markdown engines will let you have a div tag and they'll just let it pass through as HTML.
Yeah. So.
Well, as far as I know, a greater than sign wouldn't break a Markdown document. I don't think greater than is a special character in Markdown, which is why I'm kind of curious, what's this premise based on?
Well, but if you had, something like this, the main tag, that would actually create a tag and not actually output the main tag. So you'd want to have the encoding, so on the page they see that.
Okay, that makes sense. So if the Markdown parser you're using just passes through any HTML tags directly.
Yeah. And that's what CommandBox does for some of the Markdown documents that we have. So.
Yeah, I think that's fairly ubiquitous as far as Markdown parsers just passing through HTML. So that makes sense. So if you had text that looked like HTML but it wasn't really, you'd need to escape it. I don't think I'd actually seen this post and just skimming through it. I assume the solution was just to encode for HTML or similar.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find where he actually shows how he fixed it.
Looks like he's using the toString and then listing the rest. toString produces the following string where it has the encoding. So it's.
Huh. Yeah. I just would have taken the text and then re-encoded what I wanted to be re-encoded again.
That's just, I think it's just
extract it out of the XML into its pure original form, and then based on what you're putting it into, in this case Markdown, if required, re-encode whatever bits you want encoded. I wouldn't have necessarily tried to get the original. I'd be let the XML untangle itself into text and then re-encode it based on the input. But
yeah, I don't know.
Pretty interesting post though.
Yeah, like I say, he's dealing with a lot of real-world problems. With a lot of times legacy migration, we're doing this type of stuff. Maybe not to Markdown, but we're trying to go through, clean stuff up, and we're using some passes to go and remove certain things or update certain pieces. So pretty interesting. Next, we also had the blog post about CommandBox 5.0.1.
Oh, look, one of those patch releases. So what's funny is the CommandBox 5.01 release was other than a pull request I had gotten for some tab completion stuff. There's only 5 tickets in that release, and all of them, save that one random pull request, are all related to the Docker usage of CommandBox. So there was a couple more tweaks that we had found in the being able to start a server from a shell script feature that we put in the latest Docker images. And so before John released the 3.0 Docker images, he wanted a couple more little tweaks added into CommandBox. So that's why I pushed out that 5.01 release, so he could in turn push out his 3.0 release for Docker.
Yep.
Generally speaking, if you're just using CommandBox for just your local stuff, there's probably nothing in particular you necessarily care about in the 5.01 release. It's a very small release. You're welcome to update to it. It's not going to hurt anything. Oh, I guess technically, I did change from Lucy 5.3477 to 5.3480 because that was the latest stable at the time I released it.
Yep. And that did make a difference.
It fixed one of the known issues with the 5.34 release. Unfortunately, the other known issues of 5.34 apparently are not going to be fixed in the 5.34 line as a stable release. They're fixed in the snapshot builds of 5.34, but it looks like they're never going to go anywhere. But anyway, I've hated on Lucy enough today, so I'll let that dog die or whatever.
Yep. So we also had a tweet from Dr. Dormsky. I don't know who that is, but it's all about staying safe. So they thought, basically, since everything's all about staying safe at the moment, it's a really good post on keeping your user inputted HTML safe. So there's a blog post from Microsoft, and
I saw that
it's
one.
An older one, but still a good one. So it's using anti-SAMI. So if you guys haven't used anti-SAMI, it's a library to basically help you with cross-site scripting and stuff like that. So yeah, basically you have dirty input, your policy file, and it gives you a clean output. So there's some some different options, and there's a ForgeBox package for it, of course. So you can use anti-SAMI. But yeah,
I'm pretty certain the latest version of Adobe ColdFusion has anti-SAMI baked in, does it not?
Probably does. I know
This
that
Lucy example shows him loading a bunch of jars manually. Does Lucy not added that feature?
And I was trying to see how old this blog post was because I don't know when they posted it, but I believe this is not a recent one.
Oh, it could be just a repost of an older blog.
Yeah, they just
There's no
one.
date that says when it was posted.
So if they do now, it was like 4/24/2019. So I'm probably guessing that'd be a good time for it. So it's about a year old. So
I sort of hate anti-SAMI only because I think people use it in the wrong place. I think people get confused about what anti-SAMI is for, and they use it for purposes where it's not intended. It's like the fix-all. Oh, I'll pass everything through anti-SAMI. That'll fix my problems. Anti-SAMI is only if you have user input that you expect to have HTML, like a forum where people can put bold tags around things, but you just only want to allow a subset of HTML tags. B tags, A tags, I tags are acceptable, but I just don't want these other tags. Anti-SAMI is not intended for a form where a user is just putting in data which should never have HTML of any kind. You just simply want to be able to escape that data when outputting it on the next page so it can't have malicious things in it. But I've seen people overuse anti-SAMI like, oh, I'll just pass everything to anti-SAMI. That'll solve my problems. No. But anyway, random rant about that. The funny thing is most people don't need anti-SAMI when they use it. They think it's like a general purpose, this will make your site safe. And it's like, no, it's for inputs that you expect a subset of valid HTML tags. It's the only time you should be using anti-SAMI. But anyway, I don't know. That's another rant of my own.
Yep. We should start a new podcast, Brad's Rants.
Oh, well, I don't. If any of you British people might listen to, or might be familiar with the show Mitchell and Webb, or that Mitchell and Webb look, David Mitchell's Soapbox was a spinoff from that, and it was just basically the character. I say character, it's his real name. David Mitchell would just sit and rant for like 5 minutes about like how Americans misuse the Queen's English. The Queen's English. He doesn't quite talk like that, but it's just funny. And of course, the British do like biting, like making fun of you humor better than anybody. I was showing my daughter some of those. Yeah, it could be like the Bradwood Soapbox. I sit and complain about how people don't sanitize their form inputs.
Hey, you've got several subscribers in the live chat already, so
we have a new podcast in the making.
Well, Brad, if you get extra time during this pandemic, start a rant podcast. I'm sure you've got plenty of content.
Let me get the screencast out of it first.
Okay, so we also had a tweet from Matt Clemente about his live streaming. So last week he also live streamed. So it looks like every Wednesday about 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central PM. for all of those. He's been live streaming every week. I don't know if he's going to be doing it this week or not, so we didn't
I haven't
announce
had a
it.
chance to watch any of them. I see them on Twitter, but Wednesdays have always been a church night for me, and so I'm always heading out of the house. But now that I'm stuck at home for the rest of my life, I might actually be able to tune into one of his things.
So yeah, so we've got the link there for the tweet as well as the link to the video from last week. But he's basically building on top of what he did last week, which was building custom commands. So we'll see if he's got another one this week. So, but yeah, thanks for sharing, Matt. And he usually blogs about them later, so I'm sure we'll see a blog post about that coming soon. And he has actually an older blog post that I missed last week because there was so many last week I couldn't keep up.
Well, we're almost done.
Yep.
We're like an hour and 15 now.
Yeah,
That's what happens when Brad starts ranting.
Yep. So David Bryce posted on the Cold Fusion portal saying, "Can't find Cold Fusion talent. Maybe it's time to reevaluate allowing remote work." And that's pretty timely considering everyone has to work remotely now.
Quite timely.
So
Yes.
this might even be more important because now people can work from home. They are working from home, and they might realize that it actually works. Although people are looking at the numbers too much and not actually working. But so his blog post was basically saying, developers are always looking for jobs. Jobs are always looking for developers. Maybe if they allow remote work, everyone can get a job, and people can find the people they need.
He kind of goes through a bunch of like common issues people have with remote work, and then addresses them and says, "Well, here's how you can work around that." So
yeah, and so I think it's a really good blog post. And yeah, sorry I missed that one last week, everybody, but it makes even more sense this week. So yeah,
I like this section. Donald Duck was ahead of his time. Is pointing out the fact that Donald Duck is like dressed from like the waist up and he's naked from the waist down, which is I may not be even wearing pants right now. Who knows? As long as I don't stand up.
We don't want to find out.
Secret.
Yep. So pretty good. Okay, so let's jump that. Let's get into find a job. So we have several jobs this week. Right now on getcfmljobs.com, there's 25 jobs from 21 companies, 19 locations, and 5 countries.
One in my backyard, Overland Park. That's like the next suburb over from me.
Yeah, so the 2 new ones this week.
Oh, Ulig. I know Ulig. They have a lot of Cold Fusion stuff.
Yeah, so a full-time
software
developer.
They use ColdBox too. They use ColdBox.
Cool. So yeah,
I don't know if they use it for everything, but I know that. I actually I applied at Ulig years ago. They're a pretty cool place.
Yep. So they have a full-time software developer, Cold Fusion, at Overland Park, Kansas City, or Kansas, I guess. Not. Is that Kansas City in there?
Well, I mean, it's in the Kansas City metro. Overland Park is on the Kansas side of a state line. I mean, it's kind of just right in the middle of the metro over on the Kansas side, but yeah.
Okay. So that was posted on the 20th. And also there's another job posted on the 20th, full-time Cold Fusion developer at Chennai, Tamil Nadu in India. And so that's available on the CFMLjobs.com site as well. So
there you go.
Cool. Okay. So ForgeBox module of the week. Scott Steinbeck just mentioned it actually in the channel.
Scott Steinbeck.
Whoops by Eric Peterson with some recent contributions by Scott Steinbeck.
Or if you're a Midwesterner, it should be
Just drop the first half of the word, sure. So this interactive debugger for exceptions in CFML and ColdBox, they blatantly copied it from flip.github.io/whoops.
Imitation is a serious form of flattery, Gavin.
Yep. It's got a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, basically what it does, it takes a simple error debugger, and I think I even have a video here somewhere. If I can find it, I can share it.
But it replaces the default error template in ColdBox, right?
Yep, but this is what it looks like for those who are watching. It actually allows you to click on the different pieces of the stack trace and see that focused. And it even gives you a little open button now to open an editor directly from the actual error message, which is pretty neat. So a lot of times it's hard to go find the trace and then go back and find where it's actually being called, but it'll do it for you. Give you the open editor, and it opens in 8 different types of editors too. So there's stuff for like VS Code and even Atom and stuff like that, Sublime. So pretty neat. But yeah, it's had a lot of updates recently from Scott, but it really makes it a more usable interactive debugger instead of just a line of a whole bunch of text. And I hate going through stack traces, so I think
Whoops has been around for quite some time, if I recall.
Yeah, that's what I remember them saying something about a long time ago, but I'd completely forgotten about it.
Let's look at the versions tab on ForgeBox, Gavino. Oh my gosh. June 13th, 2017 was in V1 of Whoops was published. So it's been around for like 2.5 years.
Yep, and
Getting
Eric's
some more love.
basically on his little soapbox trying to get it as the default error template for CommandBox 6. We'll see if Luis will cave to that request or not.
Yeah,
But
I think that would be awesome. I mean, because all you have to do is basically just set it as a setting to be the default thing. You want to take any bets on if we do that on how long it is before people like let that slip up into production and it's like the default production thing.
yeah, because the one thing about Whoops is basically if that
Ew.
module is installed, it basically takes over the error handler. And so if you
And it basically just
accidentally,
shows you the code, right?
yeah, if you accidentally
Ugh.
install it into production, then that would show up in production.
We
So you need
should
to make
check
sure it's a
with
dev
Gavin and
dependency.
see, or Scott, see if there's like a failsafe in there that if the environment is set to production in CommandBox, it'll just like disable itself. Because it's basically like a viewer of your source code, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's,
so the potential if that got put in production on accident for a malicious person to cause an error in your site and just be able to like browse your code could be a little unless I'm misunderstanding exactly how it works. But
yeah, I
we
think
check on that.
I think we should add that as a pull request or an issue, just to say if you're in production mode that it has a lockdown version, which
Because
just doesn't take over.
we
So
know from experience as framework authors, if you make a super dangerous feature and you just tell your users in a little note at the bottom of the readme, now remember, don't put this in production, you're like, well, I did my due diligence. Like everybody in the world will push the stupid thing right out to production because so like you have to like put in fail safes or the most dangerous stuff will end up in production even though you told them.
yeah, that
So
might be a good thing to do. Just basically have a fail safe in there if it notices it's in production that it just errors. Well, not errors, but just doesn't output, doesn't take over. But
it
Scott
drains
said
your
he,
bank account and sends the contents to Scott Steinbeck.
yeah, but he said he added all the CommandBox scopes into it and everything, so should be pretty interesting. Like I said, I haven't even installed it yet. I want to definitely try that out. But they've been sharing all the videos in the box team chat, and I've been like, ooh, I want to play with this. I forgot it even existed. So we had to make that module of the week. So thank you, Eric, for creating it, and Scott for all the work lately. And I know they've been plugging away pretty hard on that and getting a lot of updates into it. So very cool.
Oh, I see. So the way they open up editors is they have a link, and the format is like VS Code : file / and then the path to the file : line number. And I assume when you install, say, VS Code, for example, it registers a listener for links that start with that. So when you click that link, it'll just fire the native application you've installed.
Yep.
So each of these, VS Code, Insiders, Sublime, TextMate, Emacs, all these have their own custom link that the browser associates with. That's pretty typical, though. It's pretty cool. I like that.
Yep. Pretty neat. Okay, so next we have the VS Code hints, tips, and tricks of the week, and actually this one is something that's built into VS Code. I was actually going to install an extension for it.
Yeah, I'm looking for the link here. I'm like, where's the link in the show notes?
Yeah, I was
Out of the box.
We're working with a client and we're dealing with some documentation, and we have some of these search endpoints that have a bazillion parameters you can pass into the search, and we're like, man, it'd be really nice if these were alphabetized. And I was like, I wonder if there's an extension for that. So I just hit F1 on the Windows to see, okay, well, maybe I already have one installed. I've got all these file utils and everything. So I just typed sort lines, and it brought up sort lines ascending, descending. And
So
so I
you
could,
so you highlight like a list of keys in the struct or something.
yeah, and so the thing is, it only does lines at this time. So this one is just for sorting lines. So if they're all single lines, you just select them, and then you hit
So what
F1
would
or
happen if you hit Control A, F1? Would it sort the entire file and just completely ruin
well,
it?
you have to push F1 and then choose sort lines, because F1 for me is my command palette opener.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, that's what I did accidentally on a struct, and it organized all the curly braces to the end and all the keys to the top and all the,
That could go wrong pretty quickly.
thankfully, undo works.
It would be a cool kind of extension of this feature to be able to say sort all the functions in a file alphabetically. But of course, that's obviously a bit more complicated. You'd have to know where the functions start and stop, and it'd be different per language. But
Yeah, and I know there is a bunch of different extensions out there, but this one, just sort lines, is easy as that. So if you pull up your command palette, type sort lines, it'll give you ascending, descending, and it'll allow you to sort your line. So if
can
you've
you
got a
sort
bunch of
them condescending though? That's my favorite.
There's no bread option yet. Sorry.
Make work your new favorite.
Yeah. And then Scott said just about the previous one, we have to configure your editor and your .env file for it to work nicely with the whoops tool. But yeah, so this one I just thought, let you guys know that VS Code, there's a lot of great extensions out there, but there's a lot of stuff that's built into it already, so there's a lot of things you don't even need to get an extension for. So that was one of them, and I tell you, my client loved it, and we started alphabetizing everything. So, yeah, pretty good.
Does it work if you have... Does it do a text, or is it always a text sort as opposed to numeric?
I didn't mess with that enough. All I know is that basically it probably is just text. Everything I had was...
If you had like a bunch of struct keys that were all like numbers, when you do a text sort on numbers, then, stuff like 10 is above 2 or, however it works.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, I'm assuming it's just simple text. It didn't seem to have anything special, but I was just working with some simple, arguments to functions and stuff like that. So nothing too fancy, but yeah. So there's a lot of good features in there. The sort lines works pretty nice. So, yeah, make sure you alphabetize your parameters and stuff to make your life easy when you're trying to figure out which of the 35 things here are you actually going to use. So, okay.
All right, well, that brings us to our Patreon supporters, including our new supporter. Who's that, Gavin?
Katie Holmes is a new supporter. And
Isn't
we
that
actually...
like an actor?
She married Tom Cruise.
Wow, I didn't know she even listened to us.
Yeah. I think is it Katie Holmes? I don't even know. I probably got it wrong. But yeah, so Katie Holmes is our newest supporter, so thank you, Katie. And I believe we have another one even that I haven't got the name of, so we've been adding quite a few lately, so we appreciate all of your support. And for those that don't remember, Patreon support goes directly to supporting this podcast and our other podcasts that we have, all in the Modernize or Die podcast family. So Soapbox, CFML News, as well as the conference podcast. And once we meet our goal for that, then the funds for that will also go to help things like CommandBox, ForgeBox, ColdBox, ContentBox, TestBox, etc. So we got a lot of great levels there. So if you go to patreon.com/ordersolutions, you can find all of those. There's different plans. So if you want to, even something as little as $10 a month all goes to help us. So we really appreciate all your help. So you're going to complain that it's your turn again, right?
No, I did it last week.
So, okay.
It's your turn.
My turn? Okay. So thank you, Andrew Davis, Brian White, Calvin Stedden, Da Lee, Dan Card, Daniel Garcia, David Bellinger, Dadia Lesnicki, Don Bellamy, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Jan Yannick, Jeremy Adams, John Farrar, Jordan Clark, Joseph Lamery, Katie Holmes, Laxmo Terhadi, Matthew Clemente, Mingo Hagen, Richard Herbert, Samuel Knowlton, Scott Steinbeck, VJ, and Yogesh Mehter. So thanks, everybody. We really appreciate all your support for our Patreon. And you guys can see your names listed up on ordersolutions.com/about-us/sponsors. And you can see some of the other sponsors that we have as well. But if you guys would like to find out more, again, patreon.com/ordersolutions. You can see all the packages available, so you can support this podcast. So if you're still listening after all this time, maybe you'll like us enough to think about supporting us. But
maybe our longest podcast time ever. What time
it might be.
1:30?
Oh my gosh, we might need to break this out into different sections. And I'm actually thinking about taking some of these podcasts and ripping out all the VS Code hints, tips, and the ForgeBox modules, and making their own little channel.
Little chunks.
Yeah, because
it's not a bad idea. Political
just...
podcasts do that. They have like an hour-long podcast, and they kind of break up little chunks. So people that don't have a full hour, but they want to get a little soundbite, will do that.
Yeah, so maybe we just do that and just take Brad's rants and take out an hour and 25 minutes of this podcast.
You're gonna say, that's gonna be like 90% of the time. There'll be nothing left.
Yeah, so we might have a few extra things, but anyways, well, thanks everybody. It's time for bed. Had a long one today, but thanks everybody for listening, and yeah, hopefully you guys can go sign up for ITB 2020 online, and we'll see you guys all there. See you next week.
Adios, guys.
Bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.